Welcome to the Ascent of Mount Carmel channel. This channel is devoted to a reading and better understanding of the book Ascent of Mount Carmel by St. John of the Cross. Today we're discussing the second book, the 29th chapter. And it seems to me that St. John's writing style, or at least the English translation of it, changes a bit with this chapter, and he seems more animated about what he's writing. Perhaps this topic got him riled up. Now this is a very interesting chapter, and there's more reality shifting stuff here than you're going to find in a Philip K. Dick novel, except Philip K. Dick wrote science fiction, and this is all very real. As you recall in the last chapter, St. John introduced us to supernatural interior locutions, and he told us that there are three main types, and they are successive locutions, formal locutions, and substantial locutions. In this chapter, St. John breaks down the first type of locution, successive locutions, and these locutions may come to us when the soul is absorbed in meditation, and the locution will be related to the object of our meditation. When they are from God, the Holy Spirit provides the soul with certain raw concepts about the object of our meditation, and these raw concepts are transmitted to the soul without words to explain them. The intellect of the soul, which is another part of the soul, reflects upon the raw concept and tries to make sense of it. It pieces together the words and the reasoning. It's done as if one part of the soul is talking to the other. So, to the soul it will seem that it really hasn't done anything, but that a third party is providing the words and teaching it, and it's answering questions. And though the concepts were provided by the Holy Spirit, all the words and answers came from that same person. So, we might have believed that God was communicating to us, but much of the process involved us communicating with ourselves. When the soul receives concepts that are true, and when everything goes perfectly, the understanding reflects on the concepts and makes sense of them. In the process, the understanding becomes united with the truth and the object of its meditation. Since the Holy Spirit is united with truth, the understanding becomes united with the Holy Spirit in that truth. And when this happens, the soul continues to learn from the Holy Spirit by means of this truth, and it gains other truths and concepts that are related to the object of its meditation. A door is opened, and continuous illumination is given to the soul by the Holy Spirit. And this is just one of the ways that the Holy Spirit teaches us. Unfortunately, most of the time these things don't go perfectly. And one problem is that our souls receive a concept in a completely raw form. And a concept's most likely to be very subtle and spiritual, and our understanding might not be able to clearly apprehend it or properly describe it. So our lack of skill might cause the faculty of understanding to modify a concept into a form that it can more easily comprehend. So, if a concept comes from God, we can still be deceived by it because of the faulty way that we understand it. Therefore, the words and explanations that are developed by our understanding may be mostly true, but that may also be imperfect. On other occasions, the words and explanations are just flat out wrong. As a result, many people mix truth with heresy in their explanations of the locutions. But the whole time, they believe that it all came from God. And they're going to say things like, God said this to me, or they'll say that God answered me. But unfortunately, the sayings didn't come from God. They came from those same people via their faculty of understanding. And to make matters worse, once people have a successive locution, they might start praying to have more of them, and they ask for supernatural knowledge. And this leads them to unconsciously manufacture more answers to their own questions while they're thinking that they're having an ongoing dialogue with God. And for this reason, we should always discuss any locutions that we receive with our spiritual directors.
You may recall that in prior chapters we discussed how the understanding is one of the intellectual faculties of the soul. St. John tells us that if we hope to progress, we need to travel by faith and leave our understanding in darkness. The understanding of the soul is a key constituent of successive locutions. In prior chapters so far, we've only discussed one experience that is a part of divine union, and that was a revelation of the knowledge of God's essence. As you recall, that type of revelation didn't involve the understanding. It didn't involve the formation of words or explanations. St. John told us that there were no words that were possible to describe the experience. Now with successive locutions, Words and explanations and the involvement of the faculty of understanding are key constituents. Therefore, successive locutions are detours on our journey in progress.
According to St. John of the Cross, people are likely to get merely nonsensical talk and the impurity of the soul from successive locutions rather than humility and mortification of the spirit if they think, this was indeed a great thing, and God was speaking, whereas it will have been little more than nothing, or nothing at all, or less than nothing. If humility and charity aren't engendered by such experiences, and mortification and holy simplicity and silence, what can be the value of them? I say then, that these things may hinder the soul greatly in its progress to divine union because, if it pays heed to them, it will be led far astray from the abyss of faith, where the understanding must remain in darkness, and must journey in darkness, by love and in faith, and not by much reasoning. When we let go of the particulars of these locutions and just focus on the love of God and what it produces in our souls, we avoid all the problems. The value of the locutions isn't from our understanding of new concepts, but it's in allowing our souls to be led in faith. The purer and more refined our faith is, the more infused love of God we will have. And the more love we have, the more our souls will be illumined and the more gifts of the Holy Spirit will be given to us. Love is the conduit for communication from the Holy Spirit. A successive locution may communicate one or two truths, but if we keep our souls in darkness and wait attentively for the wisdom of God, this can be a much greater thing. Our goal is to wait for this communication to the soul in faith. So locutions impede our progress if we set store by them. To set store by them would be to occupy ourselves with things that are of lesser importance, and it would hinder the communication through faith, which is how God supernaturally and secretly instructs the soul with greater truths. Any benefits that these locutions provide doesn't come through our dwelling on them, because when we dwell on them, that leads us astray. The concepts received in successive locutions can come from one of three different sources, and they are the Holy Spirit, from the natural light of our own understanding, or from the devil. Some locutions come solely from the natural light of our own understanding. They're not supernatural. Some people invent new concepts and then form explanations, words, and arguments, and the origin of the concepts come from the person's own understanding in a natural manner, but many people are fooled by them and think they have attained a high degree of prayer and they're receiving communications from God. Please note that the understanding does operate at a higher level than normal when it is free from leaning on the senses. However, these locutions don't have any special virtue, and they're most likely to foster pride. The devil frequently mimics God's successive locutions, especially when we have a desire for them. And if we desire additional knowledge while we're reflecting upon our meditations, it opens the door for the devil to introduce his concepts or words by way of suggestions to the understanding. The devil can subtly deceive us by suggesting things that appear to be true. In this way, he slowly introduces us to and seduces us with heresies. And gradually, he'll fill us with subtle, false, and erroneous concepts and arguments. And the devil is successful when we attach great importance to locutions and give ourselves over to the locutions. Locutions from God will likely lead to a greater love of God, increased orthodoxy, greater humility, and reverence. And these are signs that the Holy Spirit is working within our soul and working within us. The devil's locutions usually produce vanity or complacency. And the devil's locutions also create false virtues, such as false humility. Locutions that aren't from God will likely result in some dryness after our meditation. However, even locutions that come from God may involve some aridity. And this is just one reason why it's so difficult to discern which locutions come from God, which come from the devil, and which come naturally through the faculty of understanding. John cautions us not to value locutions, or we're going to likely be deceived, or at least be hindered by them. So we should concentrate on fixing our will on God and work diligently, suffering and imitating Jesus in his life and Jesus' mortifications. This is the narrow, straight road that we travel along to arrive at all spiritual good. Well, I hope you enjoyed this installment of Ascent of Mount Carmel. We'll be back again in about a week with another installment. In the meantime, please pray for the church.
Brother, don't you get worried, brother. Don't you get brother, don't you get worried, brother, this old world almost done. Keep your lamp